Howdy, Chess College. How y'all doing? It's Thursday, the 25th. We're finishing up our second week, the humanities, our journey through the humanities, through the arts for 600 years. How's your papers coming? Been getting them done? They're due tomorrow night by midnight. Please have them in. Um, if you're not going to get them in, give me a shout out. Tell me you can't make it. Then we'll have to figure out some other way to get your paper in. We all have lives other than school lives. And so sometimes we get behind. I understand. Just give me a shout out. Thanks. Have you seen the what the journal should look like? I posted it. Please keep a weekly journal. My suggestion is you make sure you update it each week. That way, in 17 weeks, when it's due, you just have to upload it. Don't try to remember it because you won't remember it. And once again, if you miss a class or two, let me know. So today the next week we're going to be talking about an early playwright who literally changed the vernacular, the language that we still speak today. Um, you even probably say some Shakespearean language that you're not even aware of. It's become that embedded in who we are as a culture. His name is William Shakespeare. He was in the prime of the English Renaissance, 1550s in that area. Um, and he flourished and thrived for many reasons. One of which was the printing press. The Gutenberg uh, printing press had been invented a couple 50 years before, and now it could mass produce literature for sale for a penny at the market. So you can print your poetry and your sonnets and actually get the get them read. That meant more people learned how to read. It just wasn't wealthy people who had the money to pay teachers. Now schools are starting to flourish like never before because they had printed material. The other thing, the other historical things that made the era flourish for William Shakespeare was the King Henry the fifth, eighth rather, you probably heard of, the only one you probably ever heard of. He killed a bunch of his wives who couldn't have babies with him. He essentially broke away from the Catholic Church, mostly because he wanted to get divorced, which they don't allow divorce. Um, and he started the Anglican Church, which was a big deal. A lot of it was based on the paper you're writing right now about Luther and how he viewed things differently and shaped things differently, and England and other countries embraced it. Queen Elizabeth, who was an offshoot from Henry VIII, was queen during Shakespeare's time, and through her benevolence and regard for literature and poetry, um, Shakespeare thrived in his time. He was famous during his time. He was wealthy during his time. Now, in those days, theater, plays, stage plays, was considered a very base, common entertainment. It was considered below literary, uh, as far as literature is concerned, it was considered below poetry. And so it was for the common people. And that was fine with Shakespeare. He liked writing for the common people. They built this wonderful theater called the Globe Theater, which still stands today, although it got burned down many years ago, and they rebuilt it many years ago, but it still thrives today. The same design. I think it's a little more comfortable though. And it was made so that you could come to the the theater was no longer just for wealthy people. It was for the common man, and they could stand in the on the ground and watch a play for 1 penny, and that changed everything. I mean, anybody could go to a play, could come up with a penny. Um, no matter what the weather is, there was no roof. They'd be out there, rain, fog, heat. That's how important the entertainment was. It's long before internet, folks, or television, or whatever it is we watch now. And this was mass entertainment. And these plays were very well attended. And and he wrote a lot of plays. um, the interesting thing is, for political reasons, it was against the law for women to act on the stage. And some men played all the parts early on. This changed later. Some men played the queens and princesses. They played all the female parts in drag, if you will. Um, there's a great movie out there, came out 20 years ago, longer actually, called Shakespeare's in Love, and they really cover this ground. I think Gwyneth Paltrow won the Academy Award for that. Anyway, it shows what it was really like when women were first got to be on stage, uh, which was a revolution. Shakespeare was a revolution. His play, he made a lot of plays. He wrote sonnets. He wrote poetry. He was a writer's writer. He invented language. His poetry in the plays, a lot of people have trouble reading it. It's not easy. You've got to practice it. Um, but what he says, what he's saying, is the common man understood it. A lot of people think it's fancy language and it's too intellectual, but it wasn't. He has a lot of puns and jokes, drama, violence and sexual tension, and political intrigue in all his language, and people understood it. It was They had more patience in those days to understand things when they weren't in a hurry. Some of these plays would take 5 or 6 hours to perform before our short extension attention spans meant everything a TikTok video. Shakespeare would not thrive in this TikTok world today, that's for sure. Um, so when people perform Shakespeare so many times now around the world, anywhere, they try to shorten the plays as much as they can because it's hard to get people to sit down for 4 or 5 hours. Um, but that's something else. During Shakespeare's time, he um, he was a mystery. Not much is known about his early life because in those days, and there's not a lot of records. There's not a lot of like we have now. We don't know where people went to school or where they were born. Even we have to guess or piece it together through family trees, um, or his education process or anything. He wrote plays as diverse as Macbeth, Othello, King Lear, Hamlet, Midsummer's Night's Dream. He could write comedies, fairy tales, tragedies. He did it all and changed the face of the world. They perform Shakespeare's plays to this day all over the world in all languages. Has anybody been to Ashland? It's only 2 hours from here. Shakespeare up there. Have you ever seen a Shakespeare play? Even if you don't care for Shakespeare, you should try seeing one once. See what it sounds like, what it feels like, and you might change your mind on it because it's powerful. Even if you don't 100% know what's going on, you'll figure it out. Um, don't be afraid of Shakespeare in the language because it's kind of scary. It's intimidating. It is. So Shakespeare in the book, if you have your text, it starts there about page 24. It's just a brief rundown. I hope you guys do more research because you're going to write a paper about Shakespeare. I'm not going to sign it yet. It will be assigned though soon, so get ready for that. That's going to be your next essay. Um, so the Globe Theater, Hamlet. Hamlet, the lines in Hamlet, you've all heard them, even if you don't even know what Hamlet is. Shakespeare has what they call soliloquies. They're monologues. We'd call them monologues now, which is one person talking directly to the audience, just like I'm talking to you, although I'm talking to the camera on the computer. Um, Telling a story like a secret. None of the actors are hearing it or seeing it. The actor, whoever it is, Macbeth, Othello, Hamlet, is talking to the audience, sharing their innermost feelings to the audience. That was unusual. It's called breaking the fourth wall. In theater, there are three walls. You're on stage, the back wall, the two side walls. The fourth wall is the audience. That's what's called the fourth wall. And they're not supposed to look into the audience, engage at the audience, talk to the audience. Shakespeare changed that by having these monologues, these soliloquies. Now, this happens all the time now in plays and theater, musicals especially. They'll directly sing to the audience, they acknowledge the audience. It wasn't done in traditional plays. You never acknowledge the audience. You, the actors, if you ever studied theater, and I have directed theater, acted in theater, written plays, you're not supposed to acknowledge the audience. That you imagine a wall there, the fourth wall. So, to be or not to be, that is the question. Famous opening soliloquy of Hamlet, maybe the famous opening monologue in the history of all of theater, and it's asking the existential question: to be or not to be. Simple. Have you ever asked yourself that question? You might have, and you don't know it. What is your purpose? What is our purpose? What is the meaning? My being, does it serve a purpose? Does it have a meaning? We all ask these questions in our own way. It's an existential question of how do we survive our time here? If we're lucky, we live 80 years, if we're lucky, healthy, hopefully. If we disappear younger, we're not so lucky. Some of us want to disappear. Look what's going on right now. There's a lot of Hamlets out there asking themselves every day to be or not to be with our national tragedy of fentanyl overdoses. There's a lot of people out there who'd rather not be. This play captured that over 500 years ago. Hamlet is a story about revenge. It's called a tragedy. What defines a tragedy is simple. A tragedy is a bad thing happens to a good person. It's tragic. If it's a bad person and bad things happen to them, it's not tragic. Hamlet's a decent guy. He doesn't want to go through this. But his mother and her boyfriend, his uncle, assassinate her husband, Hamlet's father, so the uncle could be king. They're the bad people. Hamlet finds this out by talking to his father's ghost. Yes, in those days, conversations with ghosts, pixies, and fairies was common. Macbeth has a whole scene with witches. They were called in the play. They're called the Wicked Sisters, but they're essentially witches. They're otherworldly. They're not of this world, and that was more acceptable than maybe it is today because we all go, "There's no such thing as a witch. What's a ghost? There's no ghost." But think about it, folks. Maybe you've had a friend who's passed away, and they visit you in a dream. Is that a ghost? Maybe a parent has died. I know you guys are young. Hopefully, this hasn't happened, but it will happen. And you might have a conversation with your parents when you're sleeping in your dreams. These things are in and out of our unconscious, our subconscious, without us knowing the reason why. And Shakespeare used this in all of his plays, a bunch of them, depended on the belief in the other, not of this earth. And so when he has this conversation with his dead father, and the father says, "I did not die harmlessly, I was murdered." It sends Hamlet on a journey of madness and revenge. So, in order to ferret out the guilty parties, he doesn't know who they are. He feigns like he's losing his mind. And people are revealed that way. And he kills them all. He poisons his mother, poisons the father, accidentally kills some other people who are sort of innocent bystanders. And he himself is killed with poison, and so it doesn't end well. That's why it's called a tragedy. Tragedies in Shakespeare don't end well. Nobody comes out smiling and happy like in a Meg Ryan Hollywood movie where it's all going to work out. Yes, the truth is revealed, but the price is heavy. And Shakespeare is the heaviest of all his plays, and it's been done a lot. Been many movies starring some of our biggest actors in the world, from Richard Burton to Laurence Olivier, Kenneth Branagh. Um, Lots of people have done Hamlet because it's a challenge. It's a physical challenge, a mental challenge, a creative challenge of the highest order. So I'm going to post some stuff about Shakespeare and Hamlet in modules. Please check them out, look at them, do some research, and think about what life was like 600 years ago. No electricity, no internet. They had water, barely, in buckets. Um, some people had toilets, most didn't. And yet they thrived. The language thrived for a lot of reasons. But humans need a story. They need to be part of a story. They need to feel connections through stories. Ancient Greeks, which I don't teach in this because we're not going back that far in this class, were doing tragedies on stage 1,000 years before Shakespeare, before Christ. Antigone, Electra, Oedipus Rex. These were famous, famous stage plays done in Greece, in Greek, that we still do and read today. Storytelling is a powerful thing. And to witness a story with other people as an audience, that's why people go to churches, to be in an audience. That's why people go to movie theaters, to be in an audience. That's why you might go to a music, rock festival, whatever. The collective is important, to experience it together, because it brings us together. It's the best of who we are. And with that, contemplate this question, this weekend, this wet weekend, to be or not to be. How would you answer it? Talk to you later. Enjoy your weekend.